Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here today. Well, I'm guessing that at the end of the session today, I'm going to just take a big turn around and shift a little bit the type of presentation and the content that we have been working on during the whole day, or at least this afternoon. So my presentation sort of is based on a conceptual reflection, on a conceptual paper that I'm working on, and it's sort of I title it as a preliminary reflections on the measurement of the sustainable development of tourism under the framework of the 2030 agenda and the big data. Well, it is clear for me by listening, by looking at all the work that you are doing here today, but also by all the work that you have been doing in the last decades, I will say, and looking at UNWTO as a leader for providing guidelines for tourism measurement, that we are facing a quite complex reality. And actually, my reflection came from, or I'm going to frame it in this first slide in some ways, is that we are under a deep transformation. And we can notice it just by looking at how we consume and produce in tourism. And I guess that this challenges us also on the way that we need to measure our own reality. But just looking at it and understanding that basically all our products or our production systems are going to be traced in some ways, or are providing data in some ways to let us know how the value chain is moving on. But also we are, as consumers, getting into this important and deep transformation. So for today's or this afternoon session, I thought that it could be of interest to look at two, say, parts of this new or transforming or on the transformation reality. From one side, all the different frameworks, and in particular the 2030 framework, and from the other side, the data, a reality, how it's providing us some evidences about how things are going on. And with the basic aim to better understand this phenomenon of tourism that every day is changing and pushing us forward to look for new ways of understanding it. So this reflection of the paper I started to work on has two main sections. From one side, the measurement frameworks for sustainable tourism. It is underlined under this specific title. And the second one related to big data and some new production systems. We just have seen issues that relates to collaborative or shared economy, or also will be today looking at circular economy. So the paper, this is, I will try to guide you a little bit on this paper, initiates or starts providing some evidences about how the field has progressed, and also acknowledging the main contribution in the area of sustainable tourism from UNWTO, which has been the ongoing work to develop relevant sets of indicators that respond to policy needs. And you here are one of the most understanding results of this ongoing work. I think this network is a very important step forward in this process of evolving towards sustainable tourism. And also not just the network, but also the commitment of the UNWTO and the international observatories, this network INSTO, to advance towards a sound framework for the measurement of sustainable development of tourism by putting these meetings, the first one last year and the working group of experts, to be able to get some more insights. The review of the ongoing initiatives that I have been looking at and that we have been seeing today partially reveals that the broad rationale for developing a statistical framework for the measurement of sustainable tourism has been to inform on multiple dimensions of sustainable tourism, but also not just, it is worth it to mention also the need to find integrated policy solutions across multiple domains and varying spatial scales. I will get in depth a little bit more later on. The need to enhance the coordination among institutions, sectors, and countries. We have seen how many different type of organizations and observatories we may be looking at, and the need to increase efficiency, effectiveness, and continuity in data collection and management, what is quite a great challenge. Acknowledging the complexity in the delineation of more inclusive, plural, and useful measurement framework or frameworks of tourism sustainability, the relevance and the convenience of aiming for integration in support of global initiatives such as the UN 2030 Development Agenda and the related 20Y framework for sustainable production and consumption seem to be on the common ground of the diverse approaches. At least this is my insight, and we also today have been seeing some of the presentations leading us towards it. By far, the largest number of existing measurements relates to the SDG 12, to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. And in fact, in my own opinion, this is one of the most important issues or questions that we could be addressing for measurement purposes. We have seen how dynamic our society is, how dynamic our sector, our industries are, and we are evolving toward dynamic consumption patterns and production patterns and system every single day. So it's pretty difficult from the measurement perspective and looking at indicators or frameworks to catch, to go after this reality that really goes fast and challenges us every single day. The 10 YFIEP has initiated the development of a flexible monitoring and evaluation framework to provide directions and vision and measure its progress on capacity enhancement for the shifts toward sustainable consumption and production. The societal relations and the social technical systems involve broad systems of production and consumption. Our systems of consumption are socially produced, and production systems are based upon technologies, infrastructures, and governance processes that may largely dictate people's behavioral and consumption patterns. So it can be suggested that in order to move forward for sustainable tourism, there is a need also to alter the relationships within and between social practices, social relations, and social technical systems. So it challenges us also to better understand the purpose of many of our measurements. This global context, in my own opinion, can help us also to situate much of our understanding and work for measurement of sustainable tourism. There are, of course, many frameworks, other frameworks that many ways to assess our efforts, and we have seen that all of them are pretty much in the right. All of them are appropriated in as long as it helps us to measure and to move forward. But I believe that using these 17 SDGs as a framework for reviewing the existing methods and procedures provides some insight into the areas where measurement for sustainable tourism is being focused. Well, the paper sort of has been trying to, in that side, understand all those different frameworks and see whether a fabric can be, or whether we can start crafting a fabric that will integrate or that will help us to, as I say, draw all those frameworks in this complex orography, for saying with a metaphor, geographical metaphor. The second part of the paper goes on the new data sources, big data, and the collaborative economy to sort of reflect upon the new sources and the new data, whether it can help us to be either more efficient or shed some light on our every single day work. So what I primarily said is that the arrival of big data is also challenging the working environment for statistics, that the national and regional information bureaus now play a part of a wider range of data producers. Big data companies and business analytics are also producing data that may help us to measure and be more efficient as observatories. Data generated not only from administrative and traditional statistic sources, but for events intimately linked to the tourism phenomena, surface as relevant sources of information. We'll see later on what type of data we can be using to better understand like local satisfaction or consumption patterns. Examples of these new data sources are registers from traffic loops for traffic control cameras capturing flows of vehicles, records from mobile phones, transactions data for credit cards, and so on. The paper presents two different ways to, it's not a taxonomy, but to describe and categorize the different type of data we may have within the big data. So the most commonly discussed sources, looking at the sources, and that will be a possible classification, is data offered by mobile network operators, basically those that are measuring human flows, travelers, or visitors on the move. Like we can use this data, and has been used already, to measure the mobility in border situations or in border areas. Phone data from the geopositioning data captured by device itself, what is quite a different thing. The web by itself is a significant data framework source. Data as traces left by people using the search engines, those gatekeepers that know more than any tour operator or even any observatory. They have a lot of data. Data as records of the market and business behavior online, like web scraping produces a large amount of data on tourism supply side and gives us many times a better understanding of what it is going on the supply side than our statistical registers. We know what's going on with all the shared economy, and basically here scrapping techniques provides data also about other accommodation supply services or mobility services as well. Data from social networks like opinions, images, videos, data produced by organizations and businesses. Nowadays, a lot of companies have a wide set of options for smart analytics engagement and services based on data coming from companies such as GDS, booking platforms, transaction processors for local retail stores, or records from financial systems. We have a presentation tomorrow on bank credit records. The Internet of Things, related to data records of physical objects being connected on the Internet, RFID, QRs, and so on. For environmental purposes, I think this is the future, and the big open data. Another way to look at this taxonomy is by looking at the characteristics and the format of the data. So a taxonomy has been presented, looking at the structured data produced by computer or machine-generated data, and human-generated data that is different. Semi-structured data, such as the data that we may find in Flickr, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on, or unstructured data. That is this data that we may find either machine-generated unstructured, such as the satellites images, scientific data, photographs and videos, or the human-generated unstructured data, such as the mobile voice, the web behavior and content, or images and videos. So nowadays we may have a lot of different data, and I think this is also important from the observatory perspectives to understand that each of them requires a different type of resources to be able to be integrated in our systems. Also looking at how technology is supporting or giving us or shedding some light on our reality. A specific section has been incorporated related to collaborative or shared economy in tourism. The idea behind it is that the value of the experience is not only created by the firm and its customers, but is embedded in a large social and physical context of what is being experienced. Value, therefore, can be co-created by all stakeholders involved during the practice of the experience when knowledge is shared between them. This really challenges us in the way that we have structured and set up the traditional statistics. The new environment has endorsed collaborative tourism or tourism peer-to-peer market practices, a new trend in the way of traveling based upon sharing basic resources such as accommodation, I already mentioned, transport means, or personal experiences with other travelers through platforms where the host publishes her or her offer and the tourist makes the booking. So this big data is not just about data itself, it's also about tools and methods that are largely developed and mastered to yield insights, standards, and stakeholders' involvement. Here, the idea is that when we look at big data, we are not just looking at data, we are looking at tools, at methods, and producers, and at analysts and users, at a complete whole ecosystem. So it's a different way, sort of shifts our way to understand also the data production and the statistics framework. Another preliminary conclusion is that the overview of big data sources with relevance for tourism statistics makes it clear that new sources are just starting to emerge, and there may be more to come. The new environment is one of the other way also that affects the life cycle of the data, and in particular the quality of statistics produced. So we have to understand how to be integrating it in our systems. The different spatial dimensions and the scale of the data. I believe that the granularity and the time-sensitive characteristics of the data may facilitate a more detailed geographical analysis than those permitted nowadays by official statistics. In this sense, the nature of new data may help to address the subnational, destination, or localization level information requirements. Ideally, the statistical framework will provide coherence between national and subnational perspectives, intensifying the dialogue with users about their data, expectations and requirements of data at various scales, including the related data sources, will be feasible. So to conclude, I was telling that we are over time. So something is data, and as you know, another thing is knowledge. I think the observatories, besides or beyond the data, have the knowledge to interpret, to work on knowledge. And knowledge is what our destinations need to be able to take or make decisions. So still, I think that there is an added value, a very important added value that the observatories have to bring to this new, let's say, technology-mediated environment. The other thing will be to understand how much observatories will have to change in the future, whether, we'll be talking much more about a big data factory or something similar, more into robotics and all these new machine learning tools. but I leave it over here open to you because you are the, I would say, the main people or actors in this game or play, and you may need to decide, how far the observatories will have to move in order to deliver properly all the information and knowledge needs at the different destination or territorial scale. So thank you very much, and that's all.